interesting. Oh, interesting. Today I'm testing out two kinds of chickpeas, Rancho Gordos and Sadaf chickpeas. Now I love chickpeas, canned, roasted, blended into hummus. I mean, who doesn't? But I had a friend tell me that I had to try the Rancho Gordos. And I'm kind of excited to finally be doing this taste test. Now Sadaf here is your standard fare commodity chickpea. And this one here is what's called an heirloom variety. One is nearly twice the price of the other. Rancho Gordo chickpeas are $6.50 for 16 ounces, and Sadaf are $3 for 22 ounces. That's a big difference. But does it taste twice as good? Actually, I would think at that price difference, it would have to taste like 3 or 4 times as good. Now, heirloom beans are supposed to have better flavor, creamier, melt in your mouth, and they don't need as much soaking time. I also want to point out that these heirloom beans are like half the size of what Sadaf chickpeas look like. I'm going to soak them both for 6 hours, cook them, and then do a side-by-side taste test to find out if that extra cost is actually worth it. Find out what all this hype is all about. Let's get started. I'll see you after the good soak.
A few moments later.
Okay, so it's been 7 hours and I have my Sadaf commodity beans on my right and my Rancho Gordo on my left. Now, it looks like they did soak up quite a bit of water, although this has a lighter color. These aren't as big, but they have a nicer yellowish color. But they look really nice and plump after a nice soak. Now, I have to say that there is a lot of competing information on the internet on how long you're supposed to soak your chickpeas for. For example, they did say that you're not supposed to soak your heirloom chickpeas for more than 6 hours or they might sprout, but definitely don't do it overnight. I did a conservative 7 hours, but I felt like I could have had them soak a lot longer, like the full 8 hours, no problem. As far as texture, creaminess, and taste, I'm going to cook them in 2 ways, in the Instapot for about 15 minutes each, and also cook them on the stovetop for about 1.5 to 2 hours each and see how they turn out. I'll taste them after they cook, and then I'm gonna make some hummus because like everyone loves hummus, and maybe a taste test of the hummus might help illustrate some of the differences. This better be like 1,000,000 times more delicious, like for both beans, because I have a can of chickpeas right here that like, I don't wanna brag, but I can open in like under 30 seconds. Like no soaking for 8 hours, no cooking for 2 hours. I'm just saying, so let's get to this.
I started off by measuring out 2 cups or 320 grams of soaked chickpeas, and I have to say that a bag of chickpeas, no matter what you buy, provides you with a ton more beans than a standard 15-ounce can. Then I added almost double the amount of water, although I will say I probably should have added more, probably 2.5 times the amount of chickpeas. I was just worried about my pot overflowing, so keep that in mind when boiling chickpeas. More chickpeas, bigger pot, more water. Speaking of bigger pots, for the Instapot, I measured out 3 cups or 480 grams of chickpeas for both the Rancho Gordo and the Sadaf, adding 960 milliliters of water and popped it into the Instapot with 1 teaspoon of salt and setting it for 15 minutes, allowing it to naturally release for 26 minutes afterwards before opening up the top. For the boiling method, I also added 1 teaspoon of salt, popped them onto the burners on high to get to a boil for 20 minutes, and then lowered it to medium-low for another 70 minutes. In total, I ended up letting the ones on the stove cook for 2 hours. And in the air of fairness, I even swapped the 2 pots because one burner burns hotter than the other, so I thought that might even it out.
All right, I'm gonna do some unscientific sort of testing on the beans. This is the Sadaf boil for 2 hours, and this is the Sadaf 15-minute Instapot. This is the Rancho Gordo boil for 2 hours, and this is the Rancho Gordo Instapot for 15 minutes. We're gonna do an unofficial squish test. They were all boiled or Instapotted with a bit of salt, which helps keep their form. And so here is Sadaf. Firm, still squishy, okay. Let's do the Rancho Gordo boil, much softer. Less pushback, still firm though, that's nice. Keeps them their shape. And this is the Sadaf Instapot. Let's do the thumb. Yeah, this one's very firm. Still squishy, but more firm than the other two. And last, Rancho Gordo just feels a little softer. I don't want to gross you out, but I'm going to eat them. This is the Sadaf boil. This one's delicious. It's a little more firmer, a little grainy. Okay, and we're going to try the Rancho Gordo. My God, no. It's a little smoother. It's a little smoother. All right, let's try the Sadaf Instapot. This one had more pushback. Yeah, I wonder if the Sadaf could just use like another 5 minutes under pressure cook, although I did let it naturally cool down for almost a half hour, so there's that. And we have the Rancho Gordo 15-minute Instapot. Oh my God, no, it's yeah, it's just a little smoother. I think I'm going to put them in little dishes, mix them up, and see if I can tell the difference. I feel like that dude from Memento. We're just gonna mix these up. Okay, I think I sufficiently mixed these up. All right, so this is the first one. I'm gonna just take it pea by pea. Soft. All right, texture's not so grainy. Oh yeah, you can feel that they're a bit smaller, so yeah, I was gonna guess that this is probably the Rancho Gordo. Now, whether or not it's the Instapot or the boil, it's a little more firmer than I thought, so I'm gonna go with Instapot. I think that's here. Next. Soft. Delicious. Mindful. Demure. Yeah, this is yummy. I'm gonna say boil. Put it up here. Okay, and then this one. Yeah, you can feel the size. Yeah. You have a little more tooth to them, a little more firm. Actually, this is the Instapot one over here. Oh no, these are small, although they are more firm. I'm gonna say this is the boil. Let's see. I feel like the daredevil. The chickpea eating daredevil. Okay, let's see how I did. I think this is Sadaf boil. All right. Oh, I'm not correct. Okay. Yep, Rancho boil, got that right. And Rancho Insta, got that right. The size kind of gave it away, although there is a bit of smoothness to it. And this is the Sadaf Instapot. And this is the Sadaf boil. Okay, I mixed those two up. All right, before I run down my conclusion, I did want to make some hummus because if we're blending it, maybe this all just doesn't matter. So I'm taking the Sadaf boiled, which I thought was their best. 2 cups of that, a half a cup of tahini, 1/4 cup of olive oil, some cold water, cumin, lemon, and a pinch of garlic. And for the Rancho Gordo, I am taking the Instapot one. I thought that was the tastiest, and the same ingredients. Now, after I clean all that up, I'm just gonna compare it to a hummus made out of a can of beans because once it's all blended up, I don't know if it'll all matter. Let's get to it.
This is a pretty basic hummus recipe, and I did want to note that I did end up adding more oil to the Rancho and Sadaf versions. They were really thick and needed it. The full recipe is in the description below. One of the first food videos that inspired me to start making videos was Internet Shaquille making hummus. So I know that you should add baking soda when you boil the chickpeas so the skin comes off easier. Without the skins, I made one of the smoothest blends ever because of that. But I read that you shouldn't have to use baking soda on heirloom beans, and I wanted to be consistent with all the hummuses.
Here's the big conclusion. When it came to actually boiling and Instapotting the beans, I found that the Rancho Gordo Instapot ones were the most delicious at 15 minutes. Very tender, very quick. And then the Sadaf boil for 2 hours, I thought did a lot better than the Instapot. I'm not really sure why. I think it might have had to do with the pot I used or how much water was in there. But either way, I didn't find a huge difference in taste and texture. Now, when it came to the canned beans, I did pull out some before I pulverized it into a hummus, and it did okay on the squish test. It's a little more firm and grainy than the other two. So for that, I would say that like the Sadaf and the Rancho Gordo definitely outdo a can of beans, but you can't really beat the convenience of this. That being said, making hummus, I did find that the canned beans came out a little more liquidy and grainy. I'm just gonna give it a big taste here to confirm that again. Very grainy. I try to compensate it by not adding as much ice or oil, but it's definitely not as smooth as the other two. I'm not sure if you can really see but I tried to blend it for about the same amount of time. These are definitely way smoother. Now, as far as taste goes, the Sadaf, here we go, big scoop. Very creamy, nice smoothness, great taste, nice nutty flavor. I want to put that back in there. And the Rancho Gordo, at almost twice the price, probably even 3 times if I do the math. Let's pop that up on the screen. There's a more subtlety to the taste, I'll give you that. It's nice, it's a little nuttier. But remember, I said that this thing had to be like 1,000,000 times more to justify the price. Now, I know that there's a lot of videos out there that are like 45 minutes trying to convince you that like really expensive butter or balsamic vinegar is worth a shot. And I would say that, yeah, I like butter and balsamic vinegar. Why not treat yourself to an expensive bottle if you're really into cooking? As far as the heirloom beans, sure, if you're passing by a really fancy store and they're selling for $6.25 for a small container, and you want to cook them up and serve them to your dinner guests, by all means. But if you really want to go that extra effort, soaking them for 8 hours and then instapotting them or boiling them is a pretty awesome thing to do at half the price, if not more. And everything is getting so much more expensive here in the United States. I really don't know if it's necessarily worth it. Maybe there are other heirloom beans out there that might be worth it. Maybe they're prettier when you bake them or cook them. But as far as chickpeas, definitely a step up from the canned stuff. This will get you in a pinch, especially considering Super Bowl just passed. But honestly, I'd go with Sadaf all the way. Now I just have like a ton of hummus. So here's to you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.